Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. They're cracking down on me big time for the information that I have. There was a blackout last night. The local fire department, as the story goes, messed up my driveway on purpose during the blackout the night before. Okay. I've been getting fumed and harassed. You gotta ask yourself, why didn't they clear the rooftops during this time of extreme political strife, where there was the January rioters at the Capitol building, right? January 6th or whatever. Why didn't they clear the rooftops? There was tons of police at that event. A basic part of protecting the candidate at a rally is to secure all the rooftops in the area. Also, notice the exact way Trump was shot, when his head was turned. He just happens to be shot in the ear at a time where they're trying to determine who listens to who and why. Okay? And it has to do with the fact that people are different species than each other. Bear with me now. When you have a bird and a fish, what are the differences? Well, a lot of it has to do with the brain. Okay? The brain of the bird over time evolved wings. Okay? The brain evolved, the wings evolved. The brain of the fish made it so that the fish can breathe underwater, what have you, the gills, what have you. It has to do with the brain deciding to transform the species over time. What we see in society is a sort of fairy construct. That's why McDonald's is the way it is, Disneyland. That's why there's rockers, emos, goths. That's why there's occultists. That's why they put on a show. That's why rappers in recent years are looking more like rock stars, because it's a sort of Western, a Judeo-Western fairy show that we see taking place. We see that people deny the actual natural characteristics in someone for a fairy show. For example, if they made it more obvious by saying things like, hey, he doesn't even know how many fairy divisions there are, or he doesn't know how many magic cards there are in a deck, or he's not the expert at Ouija. He said he doesn't even know that. That's stupid, right? 666, the mark of the beast, the 666 talent, gold tax talents, a talent show. It's like a bunch of occultists and idiots. Think about it. What is the difference between being the one God set apart as the top martial artist ever possible, and somebody just simply taking advantage of people's ignorance in regards to skills? Okay, skull and bones, skill and bones, skills and genes. This system is made for white people, by white people, for Jews, by Jews, for LGBT people, by LGBT people. It's a white, Jewish, and LGBT supremacist system where they try to elevate the skill sets of the governing class. Think about craftsmen, right? They typically train their children to take on their craft, right? Carpenters, what have you. Well, some of them were bankers. Some of them were, governing class scoundrels and governing class advisors, and they trained their kids to take on their skills. And they typically, in Rome, for example, they married prostitutes. And we see in English history, we look carefully, we see there's a lot of these females are basically prostitutes who marry elitists, and they become the governing class. So people who are crafty craftsmen who cheat everyone else. And they've cultivated that thinking. And they create a psychological construct that's full of fantasy and fairy thinking. Fairies. So why did Trump get shot? Because it's reinforcing the fairy psychological construct where people are behaving like fairies. And we've seen an increase in LGBT expression and activity and participation. And what are gay people called? No offense to the LGBT community. They're often called, quote unquote, fairies. That's not a coincidence. Look up surrealism. Look up disassociation. Look up narcissism. And the word narcissist is like the word Isis. And Isis was a deity of magic, okay, that assisted in the rape by deception that was taking place in Egypt, which very much influenced the Middle East and influenced Rome and Greece, and Greco-Roman culture was what gave you modern Western culture. It's modern fairy culture. In fact, they had a cult of Isis in Rome. Harpocrates and various forms of Horus in Rome. That's part of why Julius Caesar was killed, because he brought the Egyptian deities into Rome. And then there's, Cleopatra and all this stuff that had taken place, right? Mark Antony and the sea battle and so on and so forth. Okay. So keep in mind, I'm an expert on what's going on in the world in regards to where it matters most. Okay. Society is responding to the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order in the tradition of the Greeks and the Romans. It's a Neo-Greco-Roman system, and Greek and Roman culture was about responding to the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. And they came up with false forms of Horus to superimpose that on the martial art king, and that would eventually turn into false forms of Jesus. The idea of Jesus is like a fairy story by Zeus. Zeus's Greek equivalent is Bel, and the Bible is by Bill. In fact, they also say that the Bible comes from the word Biblos, and the lady of Biblos is Balat, and another name for Baal is Baal. Baat is the feminine of Baal. It's one of the Baals, as the Bible would say. Pretty straightforward. It's a rape call system, right? The rape of Europa. The literal rape and subjugation of the European people was in the fairy white Jewish and LGBT tradition. 1 in 10 Romans were Roman citizens were Jews. So it was white Jewish and LGBT culture went through Europe and subjugated the European people. And that with that same mentality, they colonized the world. So what has happened there isn't, this candidate he's this nice guy or something. No, he reinforces the rape by deception fairy cult system, okay? And some other guys behind the scenes who control the whole kind of system in governing class groups, like the Bohemian Club, okay? And corporate partnerships and shady groups that people don't quite know what they do, like the Club of Rome and the Bilderbergs and the Business Roundtable and the Gay Roundtable. And there's a lot of these groups here. And we know they're influential, and they know they social engineer. What the hell else they do, right? They're social clubs. They social engineer. They're fraternities. They control who fraternizes with who to a large degree. Urban development, urban planning. Duh, no other way it could be. And we know corporate partnerships market things to people, and it affects the cultures. Look at the iPhones and how they affected the cultures. Look at laptops. Look at home computers. Okay, they sell you things that determine how you behave to a large degree. It determines the moods, sentiments, and behaviors, and they work with the military-industrial complex psychological operation units to do military-grade psychology and have PhDs in psychology from Stanford and Harvard and Yale and Oxford and Cambridge and on and on and on, and in the universities in Israel that control your behavior. Okay, they get together as scholars in their respective fields, chemistry, technologies, computer science, software engineering, hardware engineering, okay, sociology, psychology, and they get together to control your behavior. The word therapist is a play on words for the rapist for a reason. Look at the word therapist, you break it down in 2 words, the rapist. Psycho and psychology. Okay, Psyche is a deity of rape by deception. She was put into a trance. She's the model for a dumb slut who sees through propaganda to some degree, but goes along with it anyway. And services the Greco-Roman deities. Part of why they're changing my voice to make it so I sound weird, to make it so I sound whitish, to make it so I sound gay. And believe it or not, they're using fumes and technologies to do this, as well as editing the video after the fact. And when I go to any phone store in the area, quite often they try to sell me a phone that's in a package that's already opened, okay? When I order it in the mail, you can imagine, I've had issues where I've recorded a video where they were tampering with my mailbox. They want to make it so that I'm clear that they're going to interfere and they're harassing me, and they like to brag. Bel's Egyptian equivalent is Set, a deity of rape, storms, jackals, hippos, and on and on and on. Okay. And confusion. Rape by deception. They love to use, abuse, confuse. Write that down. They love the confusion. That's part of why they do things the way they do. Okay. So Psyche is a slut deity that sees through propaganda to a certain degree and services the Greco-Roman deities, who in their modern form are whites, Jews, LGBT types, okay, and certain token minorities who are very whitewashed. That's why token minorities tend to live in the nicer areas, have more healthy females than other minorities. Okay. It's rape by deception. If a female in her right mind comes into this world, she's not going to date an oppressor, and she's not going to date someone who's oppressor-washed. Okay? Now again, I'm part white, I'm not racist. These are the facts. Okay, when you look at who's doing what and why and what point in their cultural spectrum they're in, no female in her right mind will date a conformist, period. Especially after all the, communist Russia, Nazi Germany, they've had, colonial America, what you might call it, even though it's still continuing to this day. No female in her right mind dates a colonial or colonial wash motherfucker. No female in her right mind lets the oppressor lead her. So they're not in their right mind. That's why young Zeus is called Dionysus, who's a deity of fertility, of ritual madness, of religious ecstasy, of basically being a dumbass, a shallow, Simpson dumb fuck who goes along with stuff, and every once in a while they go, yay, we're acting funny today, like on Halloween, really Valentine's Day, it's also Lupercalia, right? It's the day of the wolf, the symbol of the Roman people. And the word wolf is the word flow spelled backwards, like the word evil is live spelled backwards, and part is trap spelled backwards. If you think that's a coincidence, you're fucking crazy. If you think you're like, well, everyone knows something like this, and I'm going to keep being a bitch, then you're a fucking coward. There's no other way to look at it. Christianity in its true form, for example, is a martyr's religion, not a conformist religion. That's why there's a New World Order war on terror, quote unquote, where they, have cults train people to be martyrs because they're trying to stigmatize the idea of dying for what is right. How did America go from arguing over my dead body, though most people were cowards historically, mind you, to, they'll just let them do whatever they want to do because they're trying to survive? Because they've been cultivating cowardice. And it's the Antichrist principle, like perhaps the core principle. It says outside the gates are the sexually immoral, those who love and practice falsehood, etc., etc., and the cowards.